Hey everybody, it's Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as the one-hand mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we are working on a Cub Cadet LT42B. This is the XT1 Enduro series with a 42-inch mower deck on it. And today I'm going to show you, in my opinion, how to service the machine. Okay, first thing I want to get into is, if you're looking up parts for your machine, you're going to go to the back of your tractor. You're going to go underneath where the sticker is right here, and you will find the model number. Starts with a 13AL, and you're going to take that to the internet and look up a Cub Cadet parts lookup, and then you'll be able to find your parts that you need. And also right here it actually says the DOM, which is date of manufacturing, which is nice, so you know when this was put into production. This is a 2023. This is the first service on it, and yes, it looks like it's brand new because I do like to have my machines clean when I work on them. Also, I like you guys to have a nice video showing everything clean. This has about 70 point some hours on it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get this ready to change the oil, the engine oil. And I've actually had a couple different things in my head about changing oil. I used to always warm them up and then I will change the oil. Well, I have found out if I let them sit while I'm working on it and they're not warmed up, one, it's a little bit cooler, don't burn myself, and also you can just do other things on the machine while you're servicing it and just letting it drain when it's cold, and normally that takes care of it too because all the oil is down at the bottom of the oil pan. First thing you want to do is put the emergency brake on and then lock it in. We're going to actually take the mower deck off, but I'm going to go show you guys how to take off the hood too so we can see this a little bit better. This is a 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine. I'm going to show you how to take the hood off real quick. Okay, so you do have to disconnect the headlights. And this is pretty straightforward. They make it easy. It's a nice little clip right here. You're just going to push this clip out and then it should pull right out. And Cub Cadet hoods are very easy to take off. Just going to tip them forward a little bit and they come right off, which is very nice. They have these, they're plastic brackets, so you have to be careful, but they're real easy to put the hood in and out of. I like that on the Cub Cadet, the newer Cub Cadets, which is nice. Also, if you want to look up parts for just the engine, right down on the valve cover of every Briggs & Stratton engine, single cylinder or not, this is a single cylinder Briggs, you can see the model type and code stamped in the top, the 33S877, and then the 003B G1. That is what you would need, the model and type. The code, the first two digits, will give you the year that it was made, so this was made in 2023. Little tip to give you guys: if you want to order parts just directly from Briggs & Stratton, you don't have to go through Cub Cadet. Mower deck off so we can tip this to drain the oil. So you're going to go ahead and put the mower deck height adjustment lever all the way in the down furthest position you can go. If you guys can service your machine on concrete or asphalt, it definitely makes it a lot easier to slide the mower deck in and out. Okay, so we're going to start on the left hand side of the mower deck and then we're going to come down. And I already have this, this machine was in here one other time for a problem and I had to take the mower deck off. Well, what I do was, you see there's different holes, but there's a stud right here. This stud is actually a bracket that comes down around here, and this is what the blade belt is held on by this bracket. And we need to make sure that we put it back in the hole, so I put a little mark on it. So if you want to use a little silver marker, put a mark on it right before we take this off. We do have to go around to the other side to loosen it up first. But we're on this side. First, we're going to come back here and we're going to disconnect the back hanger from the mower deck. And these are just butterfly clips, I call them. They're very good clips. They work well. They can be a little bit tricky to get in and out. I highly recommend when you put them back in to go from forward to rearward, because we do most of our driving in the forward position. And if they do get bumped, they'll just go back into the machine and not fall out. If you have them sitting like this and they get bumped and they pop out, you could lose it, and then the deck hanger, or then this hanger in the back will fall over. Now, if it's still tight and it won't come off, I will put a pry bar underneath the mower deck and just pull up on the mower deck a little bit. And you can use a block of wood, whatever you have, and then you just pop that up. Now we're going to go around to the other side. Okay, so I have to apologize. My mic actually stopped working on my shirt, so it got muffled up. So I'm just doing this manually, and I'm showing you that we're going to take off this bracket that I was just pointing at, but you guys try to manipulate this belt and try to get it off without taking the bracket off. It's so much easier just to take this bracket off or slide it to the side. So in this little clip here, I'm just talking about you guys just trying to yank this belt out all the time, where I'm going to show you right now that this bolt right there, all we're going to do is loosen this bolt up, and we're going to be able to push this bracket off from the other side. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. This is an 8mm socket that'll go on this bolt. You don't have to take it all the way out as long as you can loosen it up. And then I'm going to go around to the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and push this bar out of its hole and then down off to the side like that. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it's off to the side, and now we can just drop the belt down, and then you have to pull it out and through, and you just leave this bracket hang there for now. Now since we're up front, we're just going to go ahead and take this butterfly clip out right here. Now I tend to pull in the rod a little bit so you can get access to this a little bit easier. Again, if it's stuck and it doesn't want to move, then you'll have to lift up the mower deck a little bit. And also remember what hole this goes into. Usually you'll have a wear mark where it came out from the factory. Now, if you're going to leave the mower deck off for a while, make sure you take this rod out the front. It'll just go right out the front, because you can bend this if you drive around with it and you forget about it. Okay, we're going to come back to the back hanger here. And again, just take off this butterfly clip. And this is tight on here, and the deck is actually rocking back and forth hanging. So that means I need to use my pry bar, put it underneath there. And be careful if you put your fingers underneath here. And I'm just going to lift up a little bit. That'll get me to take the hanger off. I'm putting the hanger above the stud just so we can get it up out of the way. And then at this point, we're going to go ahead and raise your mower deck height adjuster handle all the way up. Be careful. This is spring loaded. So if you're not ready for this thing, it can really slap back. Just be careful of that when you disengage it. Now we have nothing interfering with us sliding this mower deck out. We do have a cable that's attached. That's your blade engagement cable. So we have to make sure when we bring it out, the cable will be in the back. And you have to make sure you don't yank it, because right here is where it sits, and there's not a lot of room to play with this, and we have to get this pin out, and I don't want to bend it, so I'm going to try to bring it out so I can show you guys. Now I'm also getting hung up on our front bar, deck hanger bar, so I'm going to take this out, get it out of the way, move this out just a little bit more. And be very careful you don't hurt your cable. That's about as taut as I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and get my pliers in there. This is a little tricky, but you got to get it out. And at this point, you can pull the cable back, and it'll come right out of a slot. There's a slot in the bracket, and that'll give us a little bit more room to play with. They made that blade engagement cable very, very short, especially in newer machines now. I have had issues getting this out. Remember when you take your spring out, that you have to go underneath the belt when you put it back in, and also underneath the brake rod here when you put it back in. This can be kind of a pain in the butt to get out, and I have had problems with this thing. So what I recommend is pushing it back. If you push your blade engagement bracket all the way back, that'll allow this to go 90 degrees, and it comes right out. All right, so that makes it nice and easy going back in again. Now, since we're going to be working on this thing, I don't want this to actually hang up on something. I'm actually going to hang it back under here. Just going to hang it on the blade height rod here, just to have it out of the way while we're working on the machine. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Okay, so we have the mower deck off, and at this point, we're going to go ahead and set up the tractor for an oil change. So we're going to take your brake off. Then you're going to come around to the back of your machine. And okay, so while we're back here, I just want to show you that behind this right here is the transmission. This is a hydrostatic transmission. And the nice thing is Cub Cadet actually does put on their website parts breakdown for this transmission if you ever need parts. in my eyes, in the normal shop, we're not going to change the oil. There is no real easy way to change the oil on these. You actually have to pull the transmission and dump it upside down, which is not going to happen in most shops. It's cost effective. It's not labor cost effective. So it's a non-serviceable transmission. There is no way to check the oil. As long as you don't have any leaks, you should be good. There is no grease fittings back here to grease. So basically, it's you just go. I've seen machines go 1,000 hours on the same transmission, and as long as you're not pulling down major trees, everything should be good. But the nice thing is, Cub Cadet does offer to give you all the parts you need for this machine. Right here, this is your release for your hydrostatic transmission, and if you ever need to push your tractor, make sure you release this first, or there is a possibility you could hurt the transmission. The rod all the way in, that is actually in the drive mode, and then when you want to push it to show a person, just pull it out. We're going to go ahead and back this up a little bit, get it over to where we can drain the oil. Okay, so we're going to need to drain the oil on that side of the motor, which is the right side of the motor, so I want to jack up the left wheel. Now you can, if you don't have a jack, the tractors aren't that heavy, but I just rather use a jack if I can. And then I'm going to put a 6x6. This is what I use. I've been using these for years. Whatever you have to put your wheel up as high as you can get it, and then put that down. Well, not as high as you can get it. You can go too high and then the tractor won't sit properly. Then I get around to the front of the machine where your front hanger is on your mower deck, where it connects to the frame. There's actually a hole, but that's a bracket. And we're going to put the jack right underneath that bracket because it's actually a stationary spot to jack up at. And then we're going to jack it up so the engine is on an angle. You probably won't be able to see that, but I have it leaning towards the drain. I use a old antifreeze container. I've been using this for years. Just going to go ahead and put that down. Our drain is here. I actually, through the years, I found that this oil drain, it does what it says it's going to do, but it never stays tight. And they seem to always want to leak at some point in life. This is a 15/16. This is a crow's foot, they call it, but it's a 15/16. Getting this behind here, we're going to try to make a couple turns on it. Let's see if we can turn it. Yep, it's actually turning, so it was loose. And you don't want to. You want to make sure they're snug. All right, so I'm not going to go any further than that because I want to be able to see the little pin here where we're going to drain it. But that's always a problem with these. As far as draining the oil, we have the tube. This is the tube I've had forever. You pull the cap, dust cap off here. Put the tube in, and then right here, there's a little nubby. You turn it to where you can slide it. And then you have to be very careful. Here's where the oil is going to be coming out. And pull that out. If you pull too hard, the whole thing's going to come out. It's a mess everywhere. All right, so now we can go ahead and service the rest of the machine while this is draining. Now we can get to the blades. And more importantly, the reason why I'm taking the deck off to service this is that you want to make sure you're able to look at your belts, spin your pulleys. If you have pulleys that are going bad and they sound loud, you want to make sure you can be able to get to them and take them off. It's a lot easier doing it with the mower deck off. Also, when you're going to install a new blade belt, you got to take your covers off. These covers are very important to have. They also are they're also belt guides that these need to be on there, and we need to take these off just to one, clean underneath here, but two, to check your bearings out on your blade hub shafts. You check your. Now it looks like they made an improvement where this guy has 70 hours on. It's just barely wearing it, which is nice. They had issues with this brake actually wearing very quickly, and I think they made this spring a little bit less tension, which is good. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to learn how to repair this brake assembly. Okay, so everything looks good, and we're going to go ahead and tip this mower deck up on its side. Be very careful. So we want to get under here and just check your blades. And you want to look for, if you're looking right down over the blade here, as you can see, this blade is not quite even with the other blade. You can get a bad cut by having this like this, and what I do is I'll spin it around to see. Okay, so it still has the gap. So we definitely have, the deck is a little bit off right now. I'll put a link in the description below on how to straighten this mower deck. This is not a blade issue because the blade is straight and it's at the same spot, and when I flip it around, the blade comes back to the same spot. So that means that the blade is straight and the deck may be the problem. Let me go ahead and I'm gonna flip this other blade around just to make sure that this blade is not bent. And this blade also is just, it's just about the same as it was on the other side. So that blade, if you spin them around and the blade's not down or up, then you know the blades are straight. And you can also, we're gonna sharpen these blades, so we're gonna take them off. Okay, so getting these blades off, and I'm gonna straighten this deck off camera, but I will, like I said, I'll put a link in the description below on how to straighten. If your blades are even, if your blades are not bent, and your mandrels, you have to also make sure that your blade hubs are not bent. What you wanna do is to check to see if these are bent, you can just, you engage your, I'm just doing this behind the scenes right now, but I'm holding the blade engagement bracket in the on position, so that makes this freewheel. And then be very careful, but you're gonna look straight down on your bolt here, and if it wobbles back and forth a lot, then you have a bent shaft. Also, you can check for your bearing noises right here, and you know, you'll hear them. And the background noise is my heater, if you hear that in the background, but this is very straight. Also, that one there is very straight. There is no wobble. Because it's in for service, I'm going to straighten this out the best I can. The blades aren't bent. I'll show you that in a second. But back to getting the blades off. 15/16 socket. And if you guys out there may use a block for stationary reason to keep these things from going anywhere, this is a 1/2-inch drive, 2-foot extension bar that you put a socket on. And sometimes you even have to put a pipe on the end of this because these can be really tight. I'm going to go ahead and use my electric impact. Counterclockwise makes them come off. And this one actually has a washer on it because this is the newer style. This is a S blade and it comes with the newer styles. This machine is a 2023, so be very careful when you're ordering parts for your machine. Use your model number of your machine, go onto the website and look up the right parts. I'm going to go ahead and take the other one off now. I'm going to go ahead and put this, I'm going to put the washer and nut back on. Highly recommend using Never Seize to put on the threads so it'll make it easier coming back off again. I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. A way that you can tell if your blades are bent is you put them on top of each other. And most of the time they'll sit pretty even. Now these being a new blade for me, it looks like they're not going to sit quite right, but you'll see a little air gap right there. And then you flip it around and the air gap should be pretty much the same. And it's really hard to do. These don't sit these don't sit flat. So they make it hard anymore. The way I showed you on here, you can definitely tell that the blades were off, but the blades were straight just by flipping them around side to side. I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen these blades up and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just sharpen these up, and as you can see, I do these by hand manually. I don't use a blade grinder any longer. Also, when I take them off, a lot of times I'll mark them. Like this one I mark with an L. And what that does is it puts them back where they came from. Even though we did have an issue with this thing not lining up correctly, I did all that off camera. Again, like I said, I'll put that link in the description below as far as trying to, you had to straighten the deck out. The deck was a little bit bent. This one here is the right, and I always go with, as you're sitting on the tractor, so the chute side would be the right side. Now I also put Never Seize. I use a copper-based Never Seize, and I did put some on here. Just did it off camera. And this has the S in it, and a lot of people will put their blades on, and you have to make sure you line them up correctly. And they'll try to do this on the ground, on their back, underneath the machine. And what they do is they get it on, but they don't have it lined up correctly. And then they put the bolt on, and it's cocked a little bit, and then it doesn't go on correct. It's like a little puzzle there. You have to have it perfect. And that's another reason why you take the mower deck off, you do it right, and you won't have these complications in the future. Now, that is on correctly. We're going to go over to the other side. You just have to line them up. And washer and nut. And also, this is a good time. I have the brake assembly in the off position on the other side of this. So that means that it's like the blades are engaged, so I can spin these, and that's when you check to make sure that everything sounds good. These bearings are perfect. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you what I did off camera here. Okay, so as you can see right here, these blades come across perfect. All right, I actually did the fix off camera, so you guys, so we can just keep this going here. But basically, the blades were straight, but the deck was bent. So they come across real even. That's a huge thing when people they put the blades on incorrectly and all of a sudden it's not cutting correctly. So you definitely want to check to make sure the blades are on correctly. Make sure your spindles are not bent. Make sure your blades aren't bent before you try straightening the deck. I'm gonna go ahead and put the deck down now and we can get working on the rest of the tractor. We're gonna go ahead and install a new spark plug. Make sure if you're doing this, make sure the engine's cold. This is your muffler. This can be really hot. I'm going to use my clip tool remover, and it's really nice to use this. The spark plug is located here, and you don't want to pull on this wire because you can pull the wire if it gets rusted to the spark plug. You can pull it off the spark plug, the wire itself, and then the clip will stay on the spark plug, and then you're in trouble. Then you have to try to fix that. So if you use either a screwdriver or a clip tool, and just pop this off. It'll just pop off. There's a metal part inside that boot. Probably not gonna be able to see that in there. That clips on the end of your spark plug. And I like to make sure that snaps on. A lot of you guys say put a little bit of dielectric grease on there. I would if I would be not concerned it would pop off. So I like to feel these clip when I'm putting them back on again. It's a 5/8 deep socket or a 5/8 spark plug socket. I'm using a 3/8 extension. Now the spark plug that was in here, they're going to a new style spark plug that's an XC92YC, but basically it's an RC12YC. So the equivalent, I used a CS6. This is equivalent to the spark plug that just came out. This is already pre-gapped. You want to make sure you gap your spark plug between 28 and 30 thousandths for a single cylinder Briggs & Stratton overhead valve engine. This is the 19 horsepower. Be very careful you don't cross thread it. I try to put these in by hand. Now I just tighten them hand tight until you get down to the crush washer on the spark plug. And the new spark plug crush washer will look like this. This is the crush washer here. And this one actually is crushed, obviously. So when you feel the spark plug get tight, then you're gonna go just about 3/4 of a turn, snug it up. I don't go by torque, I just go by feel, but you wanna make sure it is nice and snug. Clip that on just like so, and I heard it clip on there. You may have heard that. Just want to make sure it doesn't pop off. And also, if this boot has gone up your wire, sometimes these boots will run up the wire. You want this boot in between the spark plug and your muffler right here. That's protection for your spark plug right there. That's what this boot is. So sometimes you have to push the boot down a little bit, and that's perfect right there. Let's go ahead and go around to the other side of the engine. Okay, so on this side of the engine, we still have this machine tilted so it's draining out the other side. We're trying to get all the oil out of the engine, but like I said, we can just do the rest of the service. This is the fuel filter. This is pretty much what they're putting on everything right now as far as the Cub Cadet line, unless you go into the bigger machines. But I like to, this is my hose line clamp here that will not hurt the fuel line. It's just plastic. You've probably seen me use this in the past. You can get this at Harbor Freight. If you guys have a place you can get them, but it's just basically a plastic fuel line clamp. These clamps, they work good until they don't. You want to just spin the fuel filter, and that will actually get it loose from the fuel lines. I have found out that if I spin the fuel filter, it makes it a little bit easier to get the fuel line off the fuel filter. And then I'm going to use my clip removal tool. And be careful, this may spew a little bit of fuel everywhere, so that's why you put the rags down. Before I swap this out, I'm going to show you, I like to use a paper filter in here. This filter here has a screen in it, which I don't believe gets all the small debris out, but the paper filter does. And these filters will have an arrow on which way they go. If I can find it here. Okay, so you probably won't be able to see that, but there's actually an arrow right there that shows the flow, and it's supposed to flow this way. So this will go in like this. Just put the rag here. That's probably going to dribble. All right, well, that was a mess. It just popped out, as you saw. My wife is not happy with me. This is the new one right here, and we're going to go ahead and line it up. I'm going to go ahead and take these fuel line clamps off. I don't reuse these. When I put my different fuel filter in there, I go to regular screw clamps. They work so much better. If your fuel line is very hard and cracked, definitely replace it while you're here. Okay, you're going to pop the fuel line clamp off. Okay, so we're going to come up to the air filter. Door style opening right here where it's basically unlock and you have a lock position. So all you're turning these is 1/4 turn. And just make sure you don't turn them too far, you will break them. Pop up off it here. Pre-filter definitely needs to be replaced. Pull it up. Be careful you don't put any debris in the throat of the carburetor right here. And I'm going to go ahead and take this out and clean it. Clean the air filter outside, and if it's the original, all right, it'll have a Briggs and Stratton sign on it because that's a Briggs and Stratton engine. It's made in India, so that's saying something right there, but here's the part number. And I always throw away the pre-filters. That pre-filter didn't have any oil on it. It's so dusty, and I used high compressed air to blow this out. If you guys, you can find these online. I'll put a link in the description below for all the parts that I use, but these are easily found on Amazon. They're not that expensive. I always like to try to start with a brand new pre-filter, and the other one did not have any oil on it at all. So the dirt will just pass right through the pre-filter and into your air filter. So it's important to put a light film of oil. Now this is a part number for the pre-filter, but it's very important to put a light film of oil. I usually use a 0.20, but I've also found that I'm using now a foam. It's for foam air filters on motorcycles. And make sure you put your what I'm doing now is I put the pre-filter on first, then I'm going to get the spray foam here. Now, you're supposed to just be able to shake this up and spray it onto the air filter, but I don't like doing it. I think it just puts out too much. Now, this is an older can, so what I do is I clean off my bench. I'm going to go ahead and spray this on the bench. Now, I would normally, if you watch some of my other videos, I normally will just put a light layer of like 0W20 oil, just some kind of very light oil. I'm not sure if people ask if WD-40 would work or not, but I like to use oil. But you just want to make sure it's a little teeny bit. If you put too much oil on the pre-filter, it will go into the paper and it'll ruin it. So this stuff here is designed as like a tack spray. It literally is tacky. It won't get thin. It won't go through the air filter. Anybody out there in the motorcycle world knows that this stuff will not mess up your paper element behind it. But also, I think they just use a lot of motorcycles, motocross guys. I think it's just using a foam one. But anyway, so I put it on the table there. I'll put just a light layer down, and then I roll it. Okay, so as you can see, I cleaned this up already. Make sure that was nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and put the air filter down on there. Clean the inside of this out. Make sure that your knobs are in the unlock position. I'm going to go down in there and then just turn it to lock position, and they should stay in, and that's it for that. We do need to get the oil filter off of this thing, so let's go ahead around the other side and take care of the oil drain here. All right, so you're just going to push this in. Turn it to the right, and you'll see how it works right here. Just make sure you're paying attention to how that is. You want to make sure it's locked in. Pull your plastic drain pipe out. Put your dust cap back on again. I'm going to go ahead and let the jack down on this side. You have to jack up the other side. And the reason why I lean the tractors each side is just so it doesn't make such a mess. Trust me, if you've done this without leaning the tractor over, you'll know exactly what I mean about the mess. Now also, since we have the steering up in the air, this is a good time to grease the front suspension. Now, this is a Cub Cadet, which is made by MTD. MTD, for the many, many, many years that I've known MTD, they always had plastic bushings right here. And this is actually a plastic bushing with a Zerk fitting in it that's plastic. Okay, so I'm doing a little bit of voiceover right now. I was going to show you, I was going to take off this cap, which you'll see this, and show you that there are plastic bushings in these rims, which they are. This year model make of this machine is a 2023, and I still can't believe that they're actually still using plastic bushings, but believe it or not, they actually hold up very well. They hold up better than the metal bushings on the metal shafts like, you know, John Deere and Husqvarna, AYP, American Yard Products. So through the years, they've done well. Now, the thing is, you cannot purchase the bushings for these. You have to buy the rim with bushings. Now, I just tried looking it up. This year model make is a 2023, and I'm not happy about that. But going back to greasing this front wheel, we're going to go ahead and do that right now. We're going to go ahead and put a couple pumps of grease in here with my grease gun. My grease gun won't even fit on here because it's not really a real Zerk fitting. How about that? Oh, it's going in now. And I just pump it until I feel it get a little bit hard, and then when it starts coming out, you know it's full. Spin the tire a little bit. And if it's spinning slower and slower, not real fast, that means that there is definitely grease packed in there, and that's what you want. So we're going to go ahead and do the other side. All right, that took a lot of grease, and it's actually very slow, which means that it did get inside and it's packed, which is good. I like to try to get the excess off because it will collect dust. This is a solid cast iron axle, and you do need to get grease inside here. So they have the grease fittings on the inside of the axle, and it's right here. Again, you just pump it until you see it come out the bottom or the top. Or it gets stiff and starts coming back at you. Okay, so I had to really pump some grease in here. If the first 3 pumps that you saw me do, I couldn't see it come out the bottom. Right here, you can see that this was not greased for 70 hours, and I don't think it was greased from the factory and where he bought it from. So if you guys are buying one of these brand new, make sure you get yourself a grease gun. And like I said, I'm going to show all my tools that I needed at the end of this video, but make sure you grease these things right away, because these will get stiff and you wonder why your steering gets stiff. It could be that they start to get seized up. Very tight tolerance, got to get some grease in there. Let's go around and do the other side. Now I pumped a lot of grease to start coming out this way, but what we're looking for is right here, and that was the grease coming out the bottom on the other side. Sometimes you gotta put a little extra effort into it to get it to come out, and just clean up. Try to get all the grease off of around your area because it will collect a lot of dirt, and that's not good. All right, so the front suspension's greased up. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put the oil filter on. I'd like to put oil in the oil filter first. I like to let it soak up. Just my preference, you guys can do what you want. While this is setting up, I put a little bit of oil just right around the gasket to let it seal better. Now, as far as getting this off, there's a couple different ways you can go. You got this kind of oil filter wrench. This oil filter wrench, this is the one I like to use, but obviously we got steering in the way today, so I'm going to go ahead and just counterclockwise. And then I have a oil container that I cut up so I can put it underneath the oil filter so I don't make a mess. And my heater will be on in a minute. I like to let this drain for a little while. Okay, you gotta be kind of quick. You definitely want to let it sit for a while to get most all the oil that you can. If you have the engine tilted like it is, it's dripping actually into my pan onto the ground and not onto the frame too much. A little bit's on the frame. I'm just gonna go ahead and clean that up. Put the new oil filter on. And this oil filter actually tells you that you wait until you feel the gasket and then another 3/4 of a turn. I like to make them as hand tight as I can get them. And what I'll also do is I'll write the date and the hours on here. So we're gonna put 70 some hours on it and the date, just so we know when we changed it last. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put the tractor level and fill it with oil. I normally like to clean the inside neck of the oil dipstick because it usually gets really dirty, and a lot of people don't check their oil. I highly recommend checking your oil on your engine before you start it up, about every other time you cut the grass, just to make sure you're up to where you should be. I'm using a 10W30 semi-synthetic oil in pretty much everything now. 10W30 full synthetic or 10W30 semi-synthetic. This should take at least 1.5 quarts, and then you run the machine and it may take a little bit more. So I put a whole quart in and then I check it, and it'll usually come up right below the first dot on the dipstick. Okay, so on your dipstick you have a add dot and a full dot, and you want it, I like to have it right at the top of the full dot, right at the top there. Just like I said, it's right at the bottom dot right now, so we're going to need at least another 1/2 quart, and then we'll run it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let that set up. We're going to go ahead and finish the rest of the machine. I'm going to come back to the battery. Now, this is a new style battery for this particular model. This is what they call an AGM battery, and I don't know how I feel about it. I do like to have batteries. The old style battery is about 300 cold cranking amps. This one comes in at 210 cold cranking amps. This battery right now is 2 years old, almost 2 years old, and I don't think he had any problems with it at all. He hasn't told me anything. What you want to do is, these are basically like a motorcycle battery, and they're a little bit bigger. These cost much more than your regular size battery. I don't like the fact that this, the battery that holds the battery case, you might be able to take this case out, get yourself a couple of the old style bars that go down there, and might be able to swap this out to a bigger battery, a little bit cheaper battery, and you might get more the cold cranking amps is 210, but for this particular engine, it seems like it's cranking it just fine. What you want to do is, you want to, if you're any corrosion at all, you want to take these off and you want to brush them with like a little wire brush. You want to make sure they're clean. Obviously these are very clean, and you want to make sure they're tight. All right, this 10mm socket on here, these guys are both tight. They're actually in very good condition. They don't spill. They tend to hold up pretty well. That's what they're going to. I think lithium is actually much better than this, but I'm sure the dollar mark would be a lot more. I like to spray a little battery terminal protector on the battery terminals. These are very clean and they're tight, so we're good. If there's any question about cleaning these, then go ahead and clean them. After this dries, I'll put this boot down over there. Now also at this point, we can start the engine. I'm not going to do it because we're inside, but you want to check your charging system on most of the, I haven't had many charging problems in a long time with lawn tractors. Their charging units usually work pretty good, but if you want to make sure you check your charging system, you want to check your battery here. How you check a charging system is, you're going to go ahead and have your meter, and you're going to need a meter for this. You're going to go ahead and check your battery when the engine's not running. And right now we are at 12.97, so this battery has a good charge on it. Now when we start it up and run it, it should definitely be higher than 12.97, or it should gradually come up, because it's going to take away a little bit of the juice when we go to crank it. But the charging system should replenish it, and then it should be charging about 13, 14 volts. So the battery checks out good. Okay, so underneath here, hopefully you guys won't have to get into this too much, because I did my first transmission drive belt on these, and I tell you what, they're not that easy as far as I'm concerned. They should have been a little bit easier than that. But as far as looking for everything you need under here, is that you want to take a look at your transmission drive belt. This spring here is from the mower deck. We're looking at the drive belt, make sure it doesn't have any major cracks in it. There is a idler pulley right here, and if you put the brake on, once the emergency brake is on, you can spin these. They're not real easy because the transmission belt's still running here. and this one's in good shape. There is one up here that you can't see, and you spin that one to make sure that's okay. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and put this back down and get the mower deck back on. We're gonna go ahead and slide it under, and the first thing we need to do is put our blade engagement cable on, which I had hanging over here. I don't like the fact that they made it so short. Back in the day, it was a little bit easier to put on and off, but I also have I'm gonna have a video on how to remove and install this blade engagement cable on a Craftsman, but it's still an MTD. It'll be the exact same way to do it, so just keep that in mind if you guys are having problems with this. Just go back to, I'll put it in the link in the description below on this one. But at this point, you have to make sure that you're underneath your belt and you're underneath your blade brake. I'm gonna go ahead and engage the deck. Okay, so that puts that arm way back there. And like I said, makes it real easy to just put this, and actually it goes in like this. And then it's gonna go under everything. So that makes it real easy. Now we do need to get it back into this bracket here. So I'm gonna go ahead, slide that in, and you have to pull it a little bit, get it into that bracket without bending it. Now this is where it gets a little bit hard, but you have to put the pin in the hole, and I'm kind of going by feel so you guys can see this, but it should go in there's a hole in the bottom, and just like so. And it just has to stay there. That keeps this thing from coming out. All right, it's not gonna go anywhere. It's gonna stay put right there. I think somebody told me that they don't even use that. They don't even put that back in, but I gotta put it back in. I won't have any chances of falling out. You wanna make sure that your covers are back on correctly. You wanna make sure that everything's lining up. Your belt is in the position that it's supposed to be. Everything's good. And we'll push it back under. I'm gonna go ahead. I took the rod out of the front. Just to make sure to put the rod back in the front. Okay, put a little light on this thing. I don't know if you guys can see this. I should have showed you this when it was out there though, but it actually does say 46 right here, and then it says 42 up there. So you have to make sure that you get it in the right hole. We're gonna put that one on first. Pin in. Now at this point, we have to put the belt behind and through the bracket like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and put on the engine pulley. Now I'm gonna go around to the other side, and then we're gonna put it into the hole. Bracket down here, it's just hanging down here, but it's kind of stuck on the frame. But you just have to push the bracket in a little bit with your hand, and then slide it up the frame until you get to the hole, which is marked, and then it'll pop through. Just like so. And then make sure your belt is on correctly. And then we have to go around the other side and tighten it up. Make sure this side's on correctly here. So that's pretty much it for that. We're gonna go ahead and put our deck all the way down. Again, this is spring loaded, so you have to be careful. And as you can see, it doesn't line up, and this is coming all the way down, so we have to lift up the back of the mower deck. Sometimes you have to manipulate the deck forward and backward to get this to line up. A lot of times you can just pick it up from the rear, as you can see, and it just goes right in like that. Put your clip in, and I'm going to use my pliers like that. Let's go to the other side and put the hanger on. I have found once you get the one side hanger on, the other side hanger is a lot easier to do because it's already hanging in the air. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and engage your mower deck. Lock it in. And you want to go under and look to make sure that your belt is actually inside your bracket here, in between here, on the other side. Make sure everything is running the way it should be, just to make sure when you turn this on, it's going to operate as it should. Then you have to make sure you disconnect your belt, or it will not start the engine. We're going to go ahead and put the hood on, and pretty much what we're trying to do, I like this, like I said in the beginning, it's very easy. They are plastic. Hopefully they'll hold up through the years, but you just want to find the grooves, sit them down in there, just like so. We're gonna go ahead and plug our lights back in again. Now these are LED lights in the front, and they only operate when the engine is running. Some people ask me that. I'm gonna go ahead and lift the mower deck up a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and take this outside and run it, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I just had it outside to run the engine and the mower deck, and everything was running well. I'm gonna go ahead and double check the oil. It has been sitting for a little bit. All right, so that extra half is just about to the dot there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let this sit overnight and then check it in the morning before it goes back. But it looks good right there for the oil. Now, we're gonna go, I already adjusted tire pressure, but tire pressure should be done before you level the deck, and it also should be done pretty much once or twice a season. A lot of people will get stiff steering and also uneven cuts because the tire pressure has gotten out of whack. And with these tires, they're all tubeless until we put tubes in them. And I have videos on how to install a tube in this one and also the rear too. So I'll put them in the link in the description below. You don't have to replace your tires. All you have to do is put tubes in them. A lot of times these will not go bad until they dry rot, which is years and years and years down the line. But when you get a flat tire, you don't have to replace the rim and the tire. And I do know a lot of machines that have come in here that have had a rim and tire replaced, it's not the same as what you get from the factory. So you have to be careful, and they don't sit right. And some of them will actually bind up in here, so be careful. But as far as the tire pressure, it shows it right on the outside bead where the tire pressure is. It'll show it somewhere on here. I'm not gonna be able to show it to you because it's too dark. But it's between 12 and 14 most of the time on these tires. I put these up about 16 PSI to put a little bit less stress on the front suspension, and that helps, and that goes a long way. And in the rear, usually the rear are a lot lower. They're usually 10 PSI, and I'll put these about 11. So after you have your tire pressure all done, I usually put the mower deck down to about 2.5 to 3 position. And this did have a mulching cover on it. I took it off so we can do the deck level. And you're gonna do the side to side, doing front to back. We're gonna move the blade to front to back, which is forward to rearward here. I'm gonna use this gauge, which I'll also put in the link in the description below. You can get these from your John Deere dealership. You can get them online. Everybody makes these now. It's a pretty simple gauge to use. It's nice that it can go underneath the mower deck. You do have to be careful you don't hit the bottom lip of your mower deck when you're using this. This right here is designed to hit the tip of your blade, and then you're going to measure it on here, and that'll tell you how high that is. So you got to be careful when you're doing the side to side that you're not hitting this right here. We're going to go ahead and move the blade around to front to back first. So I'm just going to put that in the front. Your front to back adjustment is on the front of the rod that holds the front of the mower deck up, which is around the front. These are the nuts. One is a lock nut, and one, it's like a jam nut. And then the other one on the inside is actually what you adjust. And that's just a 3/4 inch wrench. I have made little wrenches just because it makes it a lot easier to turn these in. The hardest part is getting that lock jam nut unlocked, and you're going to need all the might you can most of the time. Hold the inside nut, and then you turn the outside nut to loosen it up, and then once the outside nut's loosened, then you can go ahead and make your adjustment. So we have to go check our adjustments right now. So what I do to check the front is just, you're going to go underneath here, you find the tip of the blade. Now if your blades are very sharp, be very careful you don't cut yourself. Once I find the tip of the blade, I'll hold the position, and then I'll look at it. Now this one here, we're a little under 2 inches in the front. I'm going to go around to the rear, and it looks like this is actually 2.5. So we are literally a 1/2 inch down in the front, so we need to come up. I like to have them about 1/4 inch or less, so we're going to have to bring the front end up. I'm just going to go ahead and turn in the nut, turn it clockwise, and it's going to bring the front end up. And then I also turn the lock nut in just to get it close to the jam nut. Our deck height again. Okay, so now this one's a little bit higher. It's about 2 1/8. And this should have brought the back down also. Yeah, so we're about a 1/4 inch down in the front. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit more. That's within 1/8, that's good. So we're gonna go ahead and I'll lock that in now. All right, so that's front to back. Now to do side to side, you're gonna bring the blade around. So you pretty much want to go straight across your mower deck with the blade. Now this blade is gonna be a little bit different than that blade over there. Just make sure that you got them both facing this direction. And we have a little over 2 1/8. And this one's down, this one's 2 1/4, so we gotta bring, so this side's gotta go down. So right behind here is the adjustment. And to lower this side, we're just gonna, you have to take the locking nut up, and then you just turn this counterclockwise, and that'll lower the mower deck. I'm gonna go ahead with a long wrench, because these can really be tough to get unlocked. From the factory, they're extremely tight. All right, so that's loose. Take my short 3/4, oops, and we're gonna actually loosen this. So we're gonna make this come down. Okay. Okay, so this is staying, it's about 2 1/8. Let's go to your side. Okay, and that's 2 1/8. So we are perfect. Let's go ahead and lock that in. I normally want to put a wrench on the bottom. I'm going to try to lock this in without putting the other wrench on here so you guys can see. All right, that locked up pretty good there. All right, don't want to go too crazy locking these in, because it'll get stuck and it'll be hard to come out. All right, so that pretty much has it level. I'll take it out for another run. I'll run the mower deck again, bring it back in before it goes out the door. I'll do one more deck level just to make sure, because sometimes they do move a little bit. And also, the concrete is never as level as you think. So you may go out and cut, and if it's a little bit off, then you may have to do a little readjusting. So that's pretty much it for how to level the mower deck. The steering is in here, and a lot of the old style steering gears wasn't really that good, and they would wear and tear. These bolts, and if you guys have any kind of steering that looks like this, check this bolt, and you can move your steering left and right as you're looking at that bolt. And if this moves back and forth, I've seen a lot of these loosen up in the frame, so you may want to get down there, and you might have to take it all apart depending on how worn out it is, but keep an eye on that. This is a newer design, and I actually like it right now. We'll see. I don't like to put any kind of grease on here. I just don't. Grease and mowers don't go good together on the outside, because all the dirt that gets attracted to them, and then you have grinding, and then next thing you know, you're just wearing parts out because of the grease and the dirt. So I leave it just the way it is, like that. Maybe there's a pivot here. Maybe you can put a little bit of lube that could slide down into that pivot right there, but other than that, your steering arms here, they both have tie rod end here, which has a ball joint in here, and sometimes these can get really, really loose. The nice thing is, on these new ones, you can actually buy these, and these will unscrew and screw in, and also you have a little bit of adjustment for your steering right here. There's also, they have them in the back now, which is nice, so if they break back there, you can adjust and you can replace them. A lot of the old ones didn't have that setup. Now you can replace them on both sides, and that's nice to do. Okay, so take the cap off your gas tank, and you can look straight down inside, and then you can actually see the inlet for the fuel line. It's just you'll be able to see it in there, and just check for debris. There is no debris in this tank. This is a pretty new machine. It does have 70 hours on it, but you can get debris that actually will get caught at the end of your, where the inlet is for the fuel line, and it'll starve your machine and you'll have problems that way. So make sure you check your fuel tank for debris. Hour meters and the hours on this. If you look right here, this is a nice hour meter. And when you first turn your key on, you're gonna see the battery voltage. Okay, so it's 12.7 and then it's gonna go to the hours. So this one here has 71.4 hours. Just like I was saying, it was right around 70 hours. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you all the tools that were needed and some of the parts that I used for this project. Okay, so the tools all from left to right. Grease gun definitely helps to have to grease the front suspension. I use the electric wrenches always. This is a 1/2 inch impact to get the blades off. This is what I use for the blade grinder. I put a link in the description below for this one. I actually bought this one off of Amazon. It's been working pretty well for me. This is a multimeter. 15/16 socket to take off the blade nuts. Have a 2-foot breaker bar. You may need a little bit more of an extension on this to get the blade bolts off if you're not using electric power. They're definitely a bear to get off from the factory. 3/4 inch wrench to do your adjusting on the mower deck. I actually cut down as you saw because it's just really hard to get in there. That works out great. Pry bar, 1/4 inch electric ratchet, which you guys see me use on everything. This is the pre-filter number for the Briggs. This is a Briggs & Stratton pre-filter number here for the air filter. I don't have the air filter number, but like I said, if you saw that on there, if I have it, I'll put it up on the screen right now. I'll find it for you guys. Oil filter, Briggs & Stratton, 492929. Now there's many different numbers for this oil filter. This one will get you this here. It could be a lot of different other ones. You can just use the Briggs & Stratton number or Cub Cadet number, whichever you like. This is just one type of oil filter wrench that I like to use, which I did not use. I used this one here to get it off, the oil filter wrench. Whatever you need to take your oil. 10W30, I used about 1.5 quarts, maybe a little bit more after it runs. 5/8 socket. This is a spark plug socket, but you can use a deep socket. We have some copper never sees, 8mm socket. Come down to a 1/4 inch. This is a 4-inch 1/4 inch extension that I used. The spark plugs here, it's an NGK CS6 that I use. They make many different ones that you can use. I like NGK products. This is a Champion RC12YC or an XC92YC, which actually came out, but it's the equivalent. The 15/16 crow's foot that I use to tighten up the oil drain. If you guys have a wrench, that probably will help you. If not, crow's foot will definitely work. This is the gauge. I'll put that in the link in the description below also. That's the gauge I use to level the mower deck out. Battery protector. I am starting to use some, this is a foam filter spray. Either that or you guys can use light oil. And just make sure you don't overdo the pre-filter. If you over oil the pre-filter, it definitely, if you overdo it, it's not good. But if you don't do it, then the dirt is gonna go pass right through the pre-filter and into the air filter, and it really, you have to have some kind of oil on the outside, at least in my opinion. A couple different pair of pliers, needle nose, regular pliers. This is my plastic fuel line clamp tool. Couple 3/8 extensions, 3/8 ratchet if you guys are just using manual. My clip removal tool, I'll put that in the link in the description below too. I love these things. These work great for doing a lot of different things. I used a 1/4 inch nut driver to take the to put the new hose clamps on. These were the old hose clamps here. A piece of metal that I just used to wrap up the blade brakes so it could be disengaged. These are all the oil drains that I actually use when I'm looking to replace this one. This one here, you may only be able to use on certain machines and you may not be able to go to these larger ones. This is the one I like a lot. This is a 4-inch, but it has the rubber O-ring here and it's just a quick disconnect like the other one, but when you push this on and lock it in, it's real simple. It's real easy to use once you have these set up. Make sure you put your thread sealer on here. This is a 4-inch length and this is the John Deere part number. So you can get that through a John Deere dealership or buy it online. This is a 3-inch right here, same thing, 3-inch, and the part number is for there. And this is one that I got off of another machine, and basically you go to your hardware store, and it is 3/8 tube with an 18 thread, and it's NPT threads, and then this is just a plug. But you can do whatever you need to do to get yourself an oil drain that works for your own machine, and like I said, you just have to be careful when you install them. Make sure you check your steering linkage to make sure it does not bind with the oil drain tube. Flashlight if needed, an air compressor to do the tire pressure, and I think that's pretty much it. So that pretty much sums it up for how to service and maintain your Cub Cadet LT42B lawn tractor. This is the XT1 Enduro series. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.